Hi guys, I'm Jay of jdotavenue's podcast, and today we're going to be talking about communication. Now, communication can be very difficult, especially when dealing with family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. So we are going to discuss how this affects us and ways that we can solve it, or at least come to a compromise. We're going to do this in a series, like maybe a 3-part series. The first is going to be relationships, and that's what we'll discuss today. So let's just get started. Any advice that I give you in this episode is either from personal experience, it could be from what I've observed with others, and just what I feel works or could work. So take it with a grain of salt, use it to your best ability and advantage, and just let me know how everything works out for you, okay? When it comes to communication and relationships, we first have to understand what a relationship is. Now, this whole podcast will be off the dome, so don't quote me too much. Relationships, I feel, are two individuals coming together. They're two complete individuals. And so they have their own personalities, and there has to be a compromise. It has to be a two-sided relationship. So if you're currently in a unilateral relationship where you're doing all the work and your partner is extremely selfish, narcissistic, this may not be the episode for you. You may need to tune into a previous episode about finding yourself, figuring out what you truly want. But I am not going to endorse any unilateral relationships or situationships, because the goal is health and the goal is wellness as well. At least that is my goal with this podcast. So any unilateral mumbo jumbo will not be endorsed. So I'm not speaking to you all. You can use the advice if you'd like, if you want to try, but those relationships are usually a dead end, and someone always ends up with the short end of the stick. So we're not going to discuss that. We're talking about healthy situations, or situations where you would like it to be healthier. And what I would suggest is, like we said, understanding what the relationship is. And because we know that there's two individuals involved, we understand that there's an importance of both parties getting their needs met. It may sound simplistic and it may sound like the obvious, but you'll be surprised to know how many people do not consider their partner equal and do not care about their partner's needs. So that first has to be addressed and fixed. Once we acknowledge that, yes, I love this person enough that I care about what they need and what they want, we can move on to the next step or phase. And that is discussing, I guess, your partner's comfort with delivery. It's important that as the sender of a message or receiver, it's important for you to know how you like this message delivered, because not everyone takes things the same way. And so your delivery is very highly important, and you'll hear me repeat that throughout this series. So finding out what's comfortable for your partner, what do they like, what has worked for them as far as how they receive messages. Some people are very anxious when you say we need to talk, so maybe with those people you don't want to do that. You may want to rephrase it and make it comfortable. Also, for some people, sitting down face to face is necessary when there's an issue. For others, a simple email is better or text is better because I have time to think about it and I have time to gather my thoughts and I have time to read your full message and not interrupt you. So that is the first thing as a couple that you want to come together and discuss. Couple, polyamorous, whatever have you. The next thing that I would suggest would be discussing the goals of the conversation. So, for example, this conversation is meant for us to improve our connection, meant for us to improve our sexual relations with each other. You want to come to a goal in the conversation. That way the receiver of the message can anticipate what is the end result, what is the end resolution, what are we looking to achieve by doing this? Is this going to be a waste of my time? That is important. I also think it's important for partners to discuss their triggers. Some people may shy away from it because they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to open up themselves. They don't want you to know too much. And their triggers have probably been shared and used against them. Or they don't like how they react and respond when their triggers are pushed. But it's extremely crucial that your partner understands why you act the way you act. An example that I've probably discussed in another podcast or just in another conversation. It's important to know your partner's triggers. Example, if your partner has abandonment issues, it's important to know that. Because if you're in the middle of a disagreement or a fight and you're dealing with someone who has abandonment issues and you try to get up and walk out, that's triggering. Because it's like you're abandoning me again. Here we go, someone else abandoning me. So we have to be careful with understanding that. And although you do want to be yourself, and it's not about being fake, but it's about caring about the other person. The person that you say, quote unquote, you love or you care about. Care enough to care about how your actions are affecting that person. Another trigger could be jealousy. Some people could be jealous and you know they're jealous. It's not a secret. So do you want to be a flirtatious person all the time? You may want to be a little careful with how you relate to others in public or in their face, in their presence, behind their back even. And again, it's not about you not being yourself. It's about respecting the other partner and caring about their feelings and their needs. Another trigger could be finances, actually. Some people are very traumatized with their past situations, maybe even childhood. They probably had a parent who had a gambling addiction or was bad with managing money, and as a result they had to struggle or pinch pennies. So you want to be careful with finances as well as a trigger. A lot of people don't know that. Like, they'll get with someone, everything goes great until they get married and you have to share finances, and then problems ensue. And that's because we don't know that this person has a trigger with finances. This person is scared as hell of being broke, it's terrifying for them because they've probably been homeless. They've probably been there before, and they do not and will not be going back there. And here you are spending money like freely, carelessly. So that could be definitely a trigger. Let me see. Another trigger could be cheating and suspicion. If you suspect your partner is cheating, maybe they're not. But if that person is your partner, you probably don't want to go places without them knowing or come off secretive. You probably don't want to tell white lies, things that you think are not a big deal. You may want to be careful with that. So understanding your partner's triggers is very crucial. Again, the goal is not to use their triggers against them. That's a wrong thing to do, clearly. And this happens, and it could happen, not that it's the person's intent, but it could be just the way they are. They could just be a very petty person. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you, so I'll push your buttons, I'll push your triggers just to get under your skin so you could feel how I feel. And again, for that person doing this, their trigger is being hurt. But then for the other person using my triggers against me, it can come off as like shady, manipulative and manipulation, which is also a trigger. So we have to be cognizant and understand our partner's triggers, what sets them off, what sets us off, and how do we come to a middle ground to make the relationship prosper? How do we use that? How do we use our partner's triggers and what sets them off to our advantage? Well, we do this by not using it against them, using them actually to help the situation. I could only think of, if I know my partner's triggers, the last thing I want to do is push them. And so if I'm communicating with them and let's say I know their triggers is that they have a hard time trusting people, I will no longer see me contacting them to say, hey, look, I'm going to be over here for a little bit with a friend, and then I'll be back. I'll be home by whatever time, 9 o'clock, if we live together. I can see that as being reasonable and thus helping them like ease their fears and concerns. And it may be a fine line of insecurity, but there's still a boundary. And I think that's well within the boundary, that it's okay and it's healthy to do that. Because again, you're easing their worry because you're coming from a place of understanding. And if they have a trigger that you just cannot deal with and accept, then it's up to you to be honest and say that and be straightforward and stop trying to force a relationship or a situation that has no business happening. Because you're not trying to change the person you're with. You're accepting them, flaws and all. But at the same time, you're also looking for them to be better. You're also encouraging them to be better. And what way of doing that, especially if you have good intent and you're not cheating or you're not doing anything foul, what better way of helping them become a better person than to ease those concerns and show them that you're the exception by coming from a place of understanding. And then after you guys sort out your triggers and compromises that you guys need to make, well, that would be the next step, is creating compromises. Again, this is not for unilateral relationships. This is for relationships that allow compromises to actually happen. Both parties getting something out of it. Because you want the other person to also ease your concerns as well. So both parties are getting something out of it. You're coming to a compromise and resolutions. Next thing, you have to both agree to these resolutions. And if you need to make a note of it, I would suggest doing that, because some people have amnesia. So you may not need to do that and have it in your email in a draft or something, maybe on your notes, in your notes app. And the next step after coming up with resolutions would be to enforce them. Not in a forceful way, but not in a micromanaging way, but in a way where you are holding them accountable. So, for example, my trigger is abandonment issues. So maybe I don't like anyone walking away from me or leaving and just without saying anything or communicating, okay, what's going on, what's happening, what are you doing? So you get up, you walk out, don't say anything while I'm talking. Don't answer any phone calls or any text messages, and let's say you stay out for the whole day and come back. That'll be an issue for me. And us having sat down, talking about it, agreeing, okay, cool. If we're in the middle of an argument, maybe I won't walk out. Or maybe I will and tell you, look, I'll be back. Give me like 30 minutes, I'll be back. I can deal with that. That's the compromise. Okay, cool. So here we are. We're getting into an argument. You walk out, you leave, you don't answer texts, you don't answer phone calls, you do the same thing again. Not following what we've agreed to. When you do return, I will definitely let you know, hey, look. Hey, remember the time we sat down, we talked about our triggers and we agreed that X, Y, and Z? I'm going to lay it out and let you know. Out of fairness, we're adults. And the goal is, again, we're communicating. This is the communication series. So yes, you're going to have to talk. And you're going to talk about uncomfortable things. But there's always a way to do so that will give you maximum results. So holding each other accountable, and it's not to say you're going to yell at the person. You calmly express that. And it's up for that person to say, look, I know I, went back on that, but it was just my emotions and I'll try to do better next time. That's fine. You have to determine how much you're willing to take. Let's use the same example. But let's take it from the other person's perspective. My trigger is fighting, period. So when I argue with someone and I get to a point that I'm getting to my boiling point, I need to leave. So while you have abandonment issues, I need to leave. Because I might snap, and I know myself and I know my limits. So to avoid that and to calm down, I need to walk out and I need a few minutes to myself to gather myself. That should also have already been discussed with your partner. And then again, the compromise could be, no problem, go ahead and leave, but just come back. Or maybe give that other person an expectation of when you'll be back, more or less. Because sometimes just knowing that they're coming back is enough to ease the person with abandonment issues concern. And on the other spectrum, for the person who needs to leave, I don't like to be restricted. I don't like to be contained or against my will. So I need my freedom to be able to walk out and calm myself how I need to. And this is why discussing triggers is important. Because had you not known that, you would have had an unrealistic expectation. Because we can only operate from how we feel naturally, because we already know ourselves, but the goal is to know our partner. And so if you're both doing your job of knowing each other and understanding each other, then you can definitely come to an agreement of some sort. But keep your promises, keep your word. That is the takeaway. So after you've made this happen, you need to keep your word. And in those moments where you notice your partner has been doing good and keeping up with their word, and you have been doing that too, it's okay as the next step to honor those moments of progress, to actually acknowledge their progress. That's very important, because again, it's about feedback. It's about letting me know that you see me, you see my efforts, you respect them, you appreciate me. And that's from both ends. Both partners should be acknowledged. So if we're doing a circle back and we're having a follow-up conversation, maybe I'll mention to you, hey, you know what? The other day, you left and you told me you'll be back, and you actually came back, and you know what? I appreciate that. Thank you for that. That was good. Like, it made me feel good, and you actually, I think you're doing better. You're really doing good. Sometimes that sounds very simple, but it's very important, guys. And that's, again, from both ends of the spectrum. And it's not going to be overnight, clearly. And this is why you can allow a little wiggle room for setbacks. You don't want to bite their head off because, you said you were going to do this and you didn't do it. No, you give them a little wiggle room to understand that this is something new to both of us, and we're not going to be perfect. But at the same time, we're going to hold each other accountable because there needs to be progress. Once you do that in a relationship, you'll notice that your communication will soar. Because you already discussed the ways in which is comfortable for your partner, what is uncomfortable for your partner and pushes their buttons, and you've eased those concerns. So now no one is in defense mode anymore. The defensive walls are kind of going down, which would allow the freedom for more acceptance and love to come in, if that makes sense. And then you guys will be unstoppable. Because once you can communicate about the unpleasant things, you can communicate about anything. Remembering to still acknowledge and appreciate your partner in the long run. Timing is very important, is another important factor that I'll mention. It's very important to discuss, confront things as they're happening. It doesn't have to be in that second, but it should definitely be close to the event, because you don't want to feel some kind of way about or feel triggered by your partner, and then 3 months later you're like, oh, remember 3 months ago when you did this? No, it's more difficult for them to understand what you're saying, where you're coming from. So it has to be very close to the event. You want to make sure that I would say, personal experience, I would not let, well, first of all, my personality, I'm going to tell you right then and there. You're going to know within like 2 hours how I'm feeling about something. And then, but and this is me being candid here. While I am very good at expressing myself immediately, my issue was I had a high expectation that the other person was the same. Like, I would just expect them, because to me it just makes sense. If something bothers you, just say it. And oftentimes that was not the case. That's not what happened. I would also expect them to be ready to have a full-on discussion at that moment. Because it's like, let's just nip this in the bud, let's get this over with. But everyone is not structured that way. And I had to learn that myself personally, that some people need time. Some people, they need a couple of days to think about how they feel and what they want and how they want things to be. And it created a lot of issues for me, because I was like, what do you mean you don't know how you feel? You feel like, I'm asking you, you don't know? Okay. And it would annoy me, but I had to learn that everyone is not the same. Some people actually need to think about what they want to say, what they want from this situation. And some people just don't care about everything. There's certain things people don't care about, so they never considered it. And that was so crazy to me, but thank God I'm delivered, honey. I understand now. And so I'm able to be more patient with my partner, and I'm still myself, and I still discuss what is uncomfortable for me, but I understand that they may not have an answer for me right then and there, and there may not be a resolution immediately, and they may need time, and so I give them time. And I'm usually, okay, so how much time do you need? And I'll say, is 3 days good? Yeah, 4 days a week? And then I'll usually play it by ear for a week or so. I'll play it by ear for about a week or so, and then I'll follow up. And I'll come in my little sweet way, like, hey, remember? And they usually know. They're like, okay, yeah, I'm ready. Or another thing that I do, so I'm not as annoying, is I would say, okay, well, when you are ready, let me know. Like, you have to let me know. You have to come and get me, because I'm not going to bother you until you come and get me. But at the same time, like, don't let 2 weeks go by, because then we have a problem. So that's worked. I usually get a response. And so timing is very important. Understanding each other's need for a specific timing. And again, if you guys can agree, compromise again. Come to a middle ground. How much time do you think is reasonable? Let's circle back, and I'll have something for you by then. Okay, cool. I've already discussed format and delivery, whether email, text, in person. Another thing that is important, friendships are not that different. And we'll discuss that in the next video. And And because it's a series, I don't think I'm going to wait a week before I drop the next video. I'll probably drop it within the next 2 days or so and have that for you, because why draw it out? Why do that to you? So that'll be it for now. Take care, guys.